You're welcome back to the show. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, acres of vegetable farms in the Upper East region have been abandoned by the owners due to silting in the dams that has led to increased cost of cultivation. Low rainfalls coupled with the shallow nature of irrigation dams have led to a situation where the farmers need longer pipes and hoses and more fuel to pump water to their farms. Upper East correspondent Abes Sori has more.
George Alokodongo won the National Best Farmer Award in 1996, and he is still very active in commercial farming. He owns at least 150 cattle and a 70-acre mango plantation located at Pualugu in the Talensi district. Like every Ghanaian farmer, Mr. Alokodongo is constantly confronted with challenges of funding and lack of government support. But one major challenge he says deserves attention is access to water.
This dam has been there. I established my farms here since 1990. And up to date, this dam called Aganya is a shrine for the people of Pualugu. It doesn't dry. And almost all the farmers depend on this river for their animals to drink, do agric, like water pumps. You can see all around. We have over 100 water pumps around here.
This dam is almost a kilometer away from Mr. Alokodongo's mango plantation. His trees are still young and far from bearing fruits. This means he is several years away from reaping the fruits of his labor. Nonetheless, he perseveres. As he waits for the rains to set in, he must find a way to get water to his farm to keep his trees alive. Therefore, he has acquired this machine that pumps water from the dam to his farm.
So I was saying that once the government has brought in an idea of one village, one dam, instead of paying money to construct a new dam, he can just come here to this Pualugu and desilt it. It's a very big area, as you can see behind me. Very big, over 100 pumping machines. Mango farmers are 10 here, each one doing from 10 acres and above to 50. We are all dependent on this one. Just recently, some have started digging boreholes. But this one is a livelihood for all the animals in Pualugu, Sia, Gorogo, part of Pusuna Mongo, then part of Argu, and even Goa. So this dam serves about 10 villages, not only Pualugu alone, 10 villages including Pualugu.
The cost of buying diesel to power these pumping machines runs into hundreds of Ghana cedis monthly. Mr. Alokodongo says some young farmers in his area have been forced to abandon their farms because they couldn't endure the cost of watering the farms.
So you see that you go to certain areas, people have abandoned the farms. Not that they will like it, but because it is not easy. The watering I'm doing alone, I've made 2 boreholes since last year. They're all helping, up to date. So you see that most of the small farmers, like those who are doing 5 acres, 10 acres, definitely if they wait after a certain time, they don't get it, they run away, you see.
The situation is not so different for farmers in Navrongo who ply their trade around the Tono irrigation dam. Teddy Ada is a young commercial farmer. He says during the rainy seasons, he cultivates maize, sorghum, and soya beans and does not face much problems with access to water because at that time, he largely depends on the rainfall pattern.
So I've been using the irrigation, but usually we start during the rainy season. Then we transplant during the rainy season. When the rainy season is over, then we continue with the irrigation.
Problems arise when he and other farmers are cultivating pepper and other vegetables during the dry season.
Where we ended last year, where the water level was, and we ended last year, is actually where we began from this season. So we need to buy more pipes more hose. Now where I fetch my water from the dam, it takes me at least up to 600 meters. When I began with the pipes, it was about, let's say, 400 meters. But last year, I started with just a bundle, which was 100 meters. But this year, I have to start with 3 bundles, which is 300 of the hose.
This means the rains are often enough for farming in the rainy season, but not enough water is stored for dry season farming because the dam is silting. The cost of pumping water from the dam to the farms has increased as a result.
So this year the production was very expensive, and now the petrol you need for the machine to work before the water will come here too. That means you need more fuel before the water could come, and the machine too easily breaks down because of the pressure, the distance. Some of us have to vacate the farms because of the cost of bringing water to the farm.
Teddy has harvested the little pepper he cultivated and decided not to continue irrigation farming for this year. Just across his farm, acres of farms have been abandoned and the crops scorched by the sun because the owners could not envisage any profits if they were to spend so much on irrigation and other farm necessities. According to the farmers, there is only one solution to this problem. Government must step in and desilt the dams even before it rolls out the one village, one dam policy. For Joy News, Albert Sori, reporting from Bolgatanga.
So certainly is the Food System Conference that's up next week between on Thursday and on Friday. We're going to have a conversation that will hopefully address some of these challenges that our very poor farmers are facing. And if we're serious about food security, this is certainly a good discussion. I have in the studio here Mr. Bernard Guri. He's the Executive Director of the Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Organizational Development. Sir, you're welcome. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
So the conference really and the issue about weather patterns that have changed. How is the conference going to address the weather patterns that have changed in the first place?
Well, I think the conference is about discussing food systems,
okay,
which means looking broadly, not just production, but everything that
has to do with the food chain.
Yes, right, okay, from the field to the table.
To the table.
Yes, and part of it, a chunk of it is about water. How do you have water to produce? This is just what we've just seen.
Okay.
And the conference is going to look at how do we deal with the issue of the climate.
Okay.
We are talking about climate change now, and a lot of the things like the seasons have changed. Farmers used to expect rain at a certain time,
and it doesn't come now.
Yeah, and so all that affects the food system. So this conference is going to look at the whole chain and the problems associated and how we can address them.
And I assume that you're going to bring people who are knowledgeable in these areas for them to talk about who are the people coming in. How do we assure our viewers and those who have to come that this is a gathering worth being a part of?
Well, it's an interesting gathering. It's not just any particular group, but the whole stakeholders, I would say. It includes the farmers themselves. It includes researchers, it includes civil society organizations, it includes people, investors. So the whole group of them are there. And I think since it's a very linked program, I think this is the best way to find a solution where everybody brings in a little bit of what they can do to solve the problem, and not just one group.
Speaking of solving the problem, recently every Thursday we do what we call the Tech Thursday. And recently we've been running quite a number of stories about University of Energy and Natural Resources. They have a satellite station that is able to monitor weather precisely. These are some of the solutions that are available, but it appears that no one is really interested in getting that sort of information to the farmer.
Yeah, that is the problem. I think it's about extension. The link between extension and a farmer is a big gap that has been found out, but we still haven't found a solution, because farmers need the information. We might have the information elsewhere, But farmers are not equipped. That's not their field, that's not their specialty. There are others who know that, who should be able to send that information to them. So unless we address this extension gap, we don't have that
and speaking
challenge.
of extension, is the Ministry of Agriculture a part of this conference? If they're not, how is the information, which I'm sure will be very valuable information to improving our agricultural sector, going to get to the ministry so that they can help the farmers, they can appreciate the issues that are prevailing on the ground?
It's basically an advocacy program, I would say.
Okay.
And the Ministry of Agriculture, maybe I would say the main targets, because they're the policy makers, the people who make the policies.
Are they coming?
So although they're going to be part of this, because this is for all stakeholders, they're going to be part of it. But at the end of the day, we're looking at how do we address the problem and what role does the ministry play in that. Particularly if we talk about extension, the people who are supposed to handle that. Of course, the policy determines whether extension, I know for some time they stopped engaging more extension persons. I know now they're beginning to rethink that. And so we want to put emphasis that we need to have extension. And that's one of the aims of this conference.
Okay, so the need for extension, I would say that is one, the need to begin to look at the weather pattern and put in place measures that address them. What else are we looking at gaining from this conference?
Yes, we're also going to look at, as I said, the food system. So we look beyond just the water. Water is not just the solution. It's a whole system. For example, right now the policy promotes more of industrial agriculture. That means a few crops like maize, wheat.
Is that so? Because government's planting for food and jobs policy appears to encourage everybody, you know, small-scale farmers to get involved.
Yes, but if we look at the kind of technologies that are being promoted, it doesn't really address the problem of the small peasant farmers down there. Because, for example, if we talk about soil fertility, it goes beyond just chemical fertilizers. But the planning for jobs is mainly about providing fertilizers, providing pesticides, providing improved seeds. The farmers have their own systems, but what is the effort? I mean, we just did a research where we try to look at our whole agricultural system and how the budget is invested. And you found that very little goes into the small farmers. It's more into commercial farming. So
and they tend to export.
Exactly, producing more for export. They're more commercial oriented.
So would you say that it's about time that we rather focus on our local, those who are producing for the local farm, the local consumption, or do we have enough?
I think the majority of Ghanaians are fed by the small farmers. In fact, Ghana is fed by the small farmers. The commercial farmers maybe just about 5% who are producing basically for export. But if you look at the budget, the focus is more on these few commercial farming. All the systems and policies more to favor them. But if you look at this huge chunk of small farmers who are really produce a feed in Ghana, there's not sufficient attention to them. And that's what this conference is about.
That's what this conference is about. Finally, tell us about the one district, one village, one dam, and how that will feature in the discussion.
Well, I think the president of late has been talking about this idea of Ghana beyond aid. And for me, this is all that it's about. That Ghana has sufficient resources to feed ourselves, but we need to mobilize those resources. And I think water is an important component. It's an important resource. So we can have this one dam in every village. That is a big solution. That is leading Ghana to its independence, where we are able to produce our own food. So I think it's a huge step towards Ghana without aid.
It'll be interesting to find out what the other people who come to the conference, the perspectives that they have about the one village, one dam. People have raised all sorts of concerns about whether it's feasible at all, because it's one thing promising and we know it will work, but you promise and you don't deliver on it, then that becomes another problem. So thank you very much for coming.
Okay, thank you.
Having this conversation with Mr. Bernard Guri. He is the Executive Director for the the Center for Indigenous Knowledge and Organizational Development. So the program is a food system conference. I beg your pardon. Is a food system conference, and it's happening next week. You've seen that ad running here on the JoyNews channel. You want to be a part of that. I think it's a very important discussion they're going to have.